In the 1960s, the average grape picker that wasn't Caucasian only made an average of 90 cents per hour, plus 10 cents per basket of grapes they picked. These pickers, named braceros, were forced into horrible working and living conditions. The boss at one farm made them all drink from the same cup, a beer can, in the field. The other grower had forced their workers to pay 25 cents per cup of water. This means they would need to work 15 minutes just to get a tiny cup of water. The housing at the farms wasn't any better. They were all completely segregated, and the workers were forced to pay $2 or more per day just to live in an unheated metal shack that was often infested with mosquitoes. The shacks also didn't have indoor plumbing or cooking facilities. If we count it all out and said they even drank 8 cups of water per day, which is way less than the average amount of water consumed a day by people, lived in one of the shacks for $2 a day, and worked 8 hours a day, they would have less than $3.50 per day to feed, clothe, and educate their families. The workers rarely got the luxury of only working 8 hours a day, though. A grand majority of braceros were overworked to near death and were usually injured or killed in easily preventable accidents. The male braceros made around $1,700 a year, and the average female bracero would make $879 per year. This maybe doesn't sound too bad for the time, but the average white worker would make way over $4,000 a year, which is literally over 2 times the amount the male braceros would make and over 4 times the amount the female braceros would make. The police and regulators for the agricultural industry were usually bribed so that they would completely look over this tragedy. A young man named Cesar Chavez joined the CSO, Community Service Organization, and worked to rise through the ranks and became national director in 1962. He had decided to leave the organization when they refused to help him attempt to get equal rights for the farm workers, the braceros. Cesar Chavez left CSO for good and started the National Farm Workers Association, the NFWA. He had decided to start it after seeing his parents suffer from hunger and severe poverty when they were grape pickers when he was a kid. Cesar Chavez started organizing his first major strikes in the spring of 1965. 85 people joined him in a strike to get a wage increase and assemble a workers' union. The growers agreed to the small wage increase but refused to allow the workers to make a union. The workers were content with the wage increase even though they were still making a lot less than average. During this time, an ally of Cesar's organization, called the Agricultural Workers Organization Community, or AWOC, led a walkout of hundreds of workers to demand more equal rights in Coachella Valley. Due to the fact that the grape growers' profits were directly tied to getting their grapes quickly and sold as soon as possible, the growers decided to raise the pay to $1.25 per hour, which was a major win for the organization. However, the workers' average yearly salary was still $1,500 lower than the yearly national average salary. The growers still refused to allow the workers to create a union. Next, Cesar Chavez went to Delano, California to organize a strike for better wages there as well. On September 16th, the NFWA and hundreds of workers meeting at Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church in Delano voted unanimously to strike also. The voting took place amongst shouts of Viva la Huelga, which, when translated to English, means to passionately shout strike. Chavez was apprehensive about the strike. When asked later about when he felt his organization, which had $100 in its bank account, would have been ready to go out on a big strike, he replied, about 1968. He later decided to join the rest of the protesters and organized a massive walkout where all of the workers would just leave the fields and join him in a picketing of the farms. By September 20th, they had enough members to make 30 farms not have enough workers to function, completely destroying the agricultural industry in the area for the time being. As they walked out, they started a march to go to every field on every farm to picket for fair wages. Striking workers, often harassed, sometimes violently, by the growers and police, would try to get the scabs to leave the field. Remarkably, their appeals were successful much of the time in persuading other workers to join the strike. The growers made a mistake almost immediately. They'd been able to end strikes with small wage concessions. Soon after the strike began, they raised wages to $1.25 per hour. This time they were shocked to discover it wasn't enough. The raise merely encouraged the strikers to believe they were being effective. Now there had to be a union too. Seeing that their picketing was merely annoying the growers and wasn't doing enough damage, Cesar sent volunteers to the NFWA all across the country telling the public to boycott grapes until the growers agreed with making a union. Cesar was gambling it all here and didn't think it was going to work, but it did. Millions of people stopped buying grapes after hearing what the growers were doing to their workers. The top two grape growers in the area, Shenley and DiGiorgio, were most vulnerable because they had a huge economic empire of unionized workers in other sections of their companies. These little strikes by grape workers could cause a domino effect among the other unionized sections within their companies. Shenley was the first to crack, but not before spraying farm workers with toxic agricultural poisons. 70 strikes left Delano on foot on March 17th, 1966, led by Chavez. They walked nearly 340 miles in 25 days. Along the way, they picked up hundreds of friends and rallied thousands of people. The march attracted media attention and public support. They arrived in Sacramento on Easter morning. Chavez announced to a cheering demonstration of 10,000 supporters that Shenley had bowed from the pressure and signed an agreement with the NFWA within weeks. DiGiorgio agreed to hold a representation election, but before the election could be held, a complication arose: another union. The International Brotherhood of Teamsters ignored social justice at the core of the farm workers' campaign for union recognition and offered itself to DiGiorgio, conservative alternative to the NFWA-AWOC union. The grower eagerly agreed. Chavez and the NFWA, infuriated at this betrayal by another union, called for the workers to boycott the election. Heeding the call of the union, more than half of the 800 workers at Giorgio's huge Sierra Vista ranch refused to vote. Californian Governor Pat Brown appointed an arbitrator who ordered another election. This time, the NFWA beat the Teamsters decisively, the two largest growers in Delano, now employers of union labor. The NFWA continued doing these strikes until 1970, when they had gotten all of the grape growers in the state to agree to their demands. Gains included a union hiring hall, a health clinic, a health plan, a credit union, community center, and a cooperative gas station, as well as higher wages. The hiring hall meant an end to discrimination and favoritism by labor contractors. In cities around the country, UFW support became stronger. UFWOC, as Chavez had envisioned, had become both a union and a civil rights movement, and this was the key to its success.